Hello learners, welcome today to our today's session. We are doing a mathematical approach to the theory of costs. Mathematical approach to the theory of costs. So we normally have two different types of questions set on this question. And one is you may be given a table, and in that table you already have figures like on the level of output, you are given the fixed cost, you are given the variable cost, and then you can be told to use that to calculate the total cost, the marginal cost, the average fixed cost, average variable cost, and the average total cost. So in case you are given such a question, then how do you go about answering that question? So I'll give an illustration. We are assuming a case where you've already been given the level of output, you know the fixed cost, and you know the variable cost. How can you use this to derive all other costs of a particular firm? So I'll give a table. We have output. So this output is in units. Then we have fixed cost. We have variable costs. Then we will use this information to calculate the total cost. Then we'll calculate the marginal cost. Then average fixed cost. Average fixed cost. Then we'll calculate average variable cost. Average variable cost. Then we'll calculate the average total cost. Average total cost. So in this case, you've already been given the output. So we said that fixed costs will remain constant all through. So fixed costs are not changing. Output is increasing by 1 unit. And then these are the variable costs that we've been given. So how do we calculate the total cost? So to calculate the total cost, we said that total cost equals fixed costs plus variable costs. So we are simply taking the fixed cost plus the variable cost to calculate the total cost. So for this, at 0 output, we are taking 50 plus 0, which will give us a total cost of 50. Then for the next 1 unit, we have fixed cost 50 plus 20, which will give us 70. Then next we have 50 plus 30, which will give us 80. 50 plus 35 will get 85. 50 plus 45 will get 95. Then 50 plus 65 will get 115, and this will give us 160. That's how we calculate the total cost. Then next we calculate the marginal cost. We say this change in total cost over change in Q, which is the same as change in TC over change in Q. So whenever we've been given such like a table, the formula that we'll use in this case is this change. And where we've been given a function, then this is what we will use. So for this case, we are using this change in total cost over change in Q. So this is simply the same as we are taking Y2 minus, Y is referring to total cost, Y2 minus Y1 over X1, X2 minus X1. So what is our Y2? What is our Y1? At zero output, there was no variable cost that was incurred, so that our total cost is 50. So the marginal cost is the change where when when you are not producing, no variable cost will be incurred. And when we are beginning to produce at unit 1, the variable cost is now 20 and it has increased the total cost from 50 to 70. So what is the change? It is simply that 70 minus 50. So at our zero level, there is no marginal cost that is incurred. But when we are beginning to produce 1 unit, that is bringing a change because of a change in the variable cost, then the output is increased to 70. So to calculate the marginal cost, we are, for the first unit, we are taking 70 minus 50 divided by 1 minus 0. So our Y2 is this new cost, which is the new total cost, and our Y1 is the initial cost, which in that case is 50. So 70 minus 20 divided by 1 minus 0, which is just like 1, we'll get what? We'll get 20. And that's our marginal cost. Then in the next, we have again increased the output by 1. So what will be the marginal cost? It is now 80 minus 70 divided by 2 minus 1. So because we are increasing the level of output by 1, that means we will simply be dividing by 1. So it is the same as 80 minus 70 over 2 minus 1, which is just the same as 30 divided by 10 divided by 1. So the marginal cost for the second unit will be 10. And then 85 minus 80 divided by 3 minus 1 will give us 5. Then next we have 95 minus 85, which will give us 10 divided by 4 minus 3, which is 1. So the answer is just 10. And then we move on to 115 minus 95. This will give us 20. And then we are taking 20 divided by 4 minus 5, which is just 1. Then marginal cost for the last unit is 160 minus 115, which will give us 45. That's how we calculate the marginal cost. Change in total cost over change in output. Then how do we calculate average cost? We say that average fixed cost equals fixed cost over output. So for the first unit where we have 0 input, our fixed cost was 50. So when you take 50 divided by 0, the average cost here will be 0. And then for the next output, our fixed cost is 50 divided by 1, which will give us 50. For the second output is 50 divided by 2, which will be 25. 50 divided by 3, that's for the third output, it will give us 16.67. And then for the fourth is 50 divided by 4, which will give us 12.5. Then 50 divided by 5 will give us 10. And then 50 divided by 6 will equal 8. then we'll have calculated the average fixed cost. We do the same for average variable cost. We say that average variable cost equals total variable cost, or which is just the same as variable cost over Q. So our variable cost for output unit 0 was 0. So this will give us 0. Then for the first unit, the variable cost is 20. To calculate the average, we are taking 20 divided by 1, which will give us 20. For the second unit is 30 divided by 2, which equals 15. For the third unit, we have 35 divided by 3. And this is equal to 11.67. For the fourth unit, the variable cost is 45. So 45 divided by 4 will get 11.25. For the fifth unit, we have 65 divided by 5, which equals 13. And for the last unit, the variable cost is 110 divided by 6, which will give us 18.33. Then lastly, how do we calculate average total cost? So we say that average cost or average total cost equals average fixed cost plus average variable cost. So since we've already calculated the average fixed cost and the average variable cost, we simply sum these together. So we'll have 0 plus 0, which will give us a 0. 50 plus 20 will give us 70. 25 plus 15, this is 40. Then 16.67 plus 11.67 equals 28.34. Then 12.5 plus 11.25 equals 23.75. And 10 plus 13, this is 23. Then we have 18.33 plus 8, which is 26.33. So that's how we answer such a question. We have another type of question where you are given functions. So where you have been given a function, then you need to know which function is this before you can go up to solve such a question. And again, the knowledge of differentiation is very important. You need to know how to differentiate a function, because we said to calculate marginal cost, we find change in TC or in total cost divided by change in Q. So this means that function has to be differentiated, or the total cost function will be differentiated for you to get the marginal cost function. So before I do this, I'll help you to just remind you what differentiation is, or just to give a short illustration of how we differentiate functions. Like assuming you've been given a function like y equals 2x cubed plus 10x squared plus 15x plus 110, and then you are told to differentiate that function. Differentiating simply means finding the derivative of that function, or what we refer to as finding the dy over dx of the function. So to differentiate this function, what we do is we take the power, this is the power 3, you take the power, multiply by the constant. So this will be 3 multiplied by 2, which will give us 6. So we have 6x. Then we reduce this power by 1. Reducing this power by 1 means it will be 3 minus 1. And that will give us 2. So the power will be reduced by 1 so that we have x squared. Then plus, we take the power, which is 2, multiply it by the constant, The 2 times 10 will give us 20x. Then reduce this power by 1. So reducing the power by 1 means we'll have 2 minus 1, which will give us x raised to power 1. So mathematically, we don't write x raised to power 1. We just write x. So it will be 20x. And then next we are plus. This x is the same as x raised to power 1. So I say that in mathematics, we are not saying that it is x raised to power 1. We are just writing x, but it is x raised to power 1. So to differentiate, we are taking this 1, we multiply by the constant, which will give us 15. And so we reduce this power by 1. When you take 1 minus 1, we'll get a 0. And that means we'll have x raised to power 0. So x raised to power 0 is just like that constant having no unknown. So we write 15. You don't write x raised to power 0. And then plus x 110. 110 is a constant, and this simply means it has an unknown that is raised to a 0. So when we have an unknown which is x that is raised to power 0, in differentiation we are taking the power which is 0, then multiply that 0 by the constant. The answer will just be 0. So whenever you've been given whenever you've been given a constant, just put a 0 because it means it has an unknown that is raised to power 0. So whenever we differentiate a constant, the answer is always 0. So our function will now be 6x squared plus 20x plus 15 plus 0. So we now say that this will be 6x squared plus 20x plus 15, so that we leave out a 0. And that's how we differentiate. So there are some times when we may be given quadratic functions or cubic functions, which may represent the total cost. So in such a case, you may be asked to identify or to determine the fixed cost function, determine the variable cost function, and use that again to calculate the average fixed function as well as average variable cost. So how do we go about that? So I'll use a simple quadratic equation. We are assuming that we've been given a total cost function, which is a cubic function of the form a plus bq plus cq squared plus dq cubed. So a cubic function is simply that function whose highest power is 3. And so in this case, when you are told to identify or determine the fixed cost, what are the fixed cost or what is the fixed cost function? Fixed cost is simply referring to the constant part of that function, and in this case, it is just equal to a. So when you are told to determine the fixed cost, sometimes or maybe the fixed cost function, it will simply be fixed cost equals to a. Why a? Because a is a constant. Then what will be the variable function? Variable cost function, this will be equal to bq plus cq squared plus dq cubed. Why so? We say that a variable cost is that cost which will change or which will vary when the level of output is varied. So any constant that has a known means that when that unknown is changed, it will change. And therefore, our known here is q, and therefore the variable cost function is simply beginning from bq plus cq squared plus q dq cubed. And then sometimes you can also be told to calculate now the average total cost. How do we, before I come to average total cost, we'll be told to calculate the average fixed cost. How do we calculate the average fixed cost? So we say that our fixed cost equals A. And we say that to calculate average fixed cost, it will be equal to fixed cost divided by Q. So that means if our fixed cost equals to A, then our average fixed cost will simply be equal to A divided by Q. And this will be our average fixed cost. Then sometimes you may also be told to calculate the average variable cost. Average variable cost. So we say that average variable cost equals variable cost over Q, where variable cost is simply referring to the total variable cost. So we are still using this function. We've said that our variable cost equals, so if our VC equals BQ plus CQ squared plus DQ cubed, and then we are told to calculate the average variable cost, then to get a VC, we will simply be dividing everything by Q. So it will be the same as BQ plus CQ squared plus DQ cubed divided by Q. So divide by Q simply means BQ over Q plus CQ squared over Q plus DQ cubed divided by Q. And what will be the result? We'll have B plus. So this is cancelling. We'll have plus CQ plus DQ squared. When we are dividing mathematically, we do what? We subtract the powers. So we have BQ divided by Q. Then this will be 1 by 2 minus 1, 3 minus 1. So the resultant figure will be, average variable cost will be B plus CQ plus DQ squared. Then if we have been told to calculate the average total cost, how do we calculate average total cost? We say that it equals average total cost equals total cost divided by Q. So we were given the total cost function, which is this. So if that is our total cost function, if TC equals A plus B Q plus CQ squared plus DQ cubed, then to get average total cost, we are simply average total cost, we are dividing the whole of this by Q, which is the same as A over Q plus BQ over Q plus CQ squared over Q plus DQ cubed over Q. So what will be ATC equal to? It will be equal to A over Q plus B plus CQ plus DQ squared. And that will be our average total cost. There are again some instances where you will now be told to calculate the marginal cost. So if you've been given the total cost function and you are told to determine the marginal cost function, what we do is you simply differentiate the total cost function. So differentiating the total cost function will give you the marginal cost function. So we say that marginal cost will be change in TC over change in Q. So if our total cost function is, if our TC equals A plus BQ plus CQ squared plus DQ cubed. Then to find MC, we are simply finding the dy over dx of the total cost function. And what will it be? I said that whenever we have a constant, that constant will automatically disappear. So A will not be there. Then Q is the same as Q raised to power 1. So we take 1 times B. So we'll have B. We reduce we reduce 1 by 1. And then Q will disappear. So we'll have B plus, then CQ. We are taking the power, we multiply by the constant. So we'll have 2 multiplied by C, which will give us 2C. And then we reduce the power by 1, which will now be 2CQ. It will not be Q squared. We've reduced the power by 1. Plus, we have 3 times the constant. So our constant here is D. So we'll have 3 multiplied by D, which will give us 3D. We reduce this unknown power by 1, which will now be Q raised to power 2. And therefore, our marginal cost function will now be B plus 2CQ plus 3DQ squared. And that will be our marginal cost function. So we can take an illustration, a mathematical illustration. Can wrap this part. So as we come to the end of this session, I want to give you an assignment. And this is the assignment. You are told that the total cost, cost and demand functions of a firm under monopolistic competition are represented as follows. So total cost equals 850 minus 8Q plus 10Q squared. P equals 200, where total cost equals, TC equals total costs, Q equals output, and P equals price. Then required part one of the question, fixed cost function. Roman 2, variable cost function. Part 1, we have fixed cost function. Then Roman 2, variable cost function. Roman 3, average cost function. And then Roman 4, marginal cost function. So you'll try the question using the principles I've given, and then you'll be able to get all that you are required to get. So bye-bye. Let's meet in the next session.